don't want any distraction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the video podcast series, Lifestyle by Design. I'm your host, Margaret Wiltshire, and I want to say thank you for your patience and waiting for us. I really appreciate it. Tonight, I have a very special guest. It's an honor to have her. Her name is Nancy Orlen Weber. Nancy, welcome.
Oh, thank you, Margaret. Thank you, sweetheart.
So you are quite welcome. It is an honor to have you here tonight. Nancy is many things. Where do I start?
But aren't we all many things?
Yes, we are. We are. We're not just, like one-dimensional beings. There are so many different parts to us, so many different moving and evolving parts. But Nancy is a psychic, and Nancy is going to talk to us tonight about learning how to trust our intuition. So, Nancy, can you tell me a little? Can you tell me a little bit about, for our guests who are on and don't know, I always find it interesting. Sometimes I read a lot about interviews, and, when you're interviewing someone, yes, the host usually knows about the person that they're interviewing, but sometimes a viewer might come on and they may not know. So I always find that interesting when people are like, you should know, and you should, and sometimes people get offended when you ask the person that you're interviewing to tell them about themselves. But I always think of that one person who may just log on, and it's like, okay, wow, this is fascinating, but what is this person doing? Who are they? So, I just felt overcome to say that. I don't know why, but
I do. I think I know why. I did an interview show for 7 years.
Okay.
On local in New Jersey, Channel 3. I interviewed many people. And I loved the mystery unraveling, and they're demonstrating who they are for everybody, which would pull out other questions. So sure, I think it's fun. So what would you like to know?
Too. Can you tell us about your journey to learning to trust your intuition?
Oh, absolutely, my dear. All right. I'll start with early on as a child. I think all of us are born with the ability to sense the universe, to sense everything, and to trust that. I think it's turned off by circumstances and events and attitudes surrounding us. So for me, I trusted my experience as a child. I didn't know it was different. I didn't call it intuition. I didn't call it psychic. I didn't call it anything. It was just what I knew. I literally began to really look at all of that in a different light much later, mid-teens, and then later than that, 20s and 30s, where circumstances and situations I worked in as a young nurse taught me that there was something going on that wasn't routine for other people. And I didn't call it anything. We're using words to describe processes that we go through. And yet I didn't label it for a very, very long time. In fact, I thought, whatever it is something I have to trust. And here's something I think we all go through is hindsight. I knew I should have trusted myself on that, right? And in whatever circumstances I went through that, eventually that wove in with the knowing of things in a lot of different circumstances, and realizing if I don't trust what comes through me, not just from me, but through me, then who should I trust? And that was more the whole response I got from me as I went along my path and realized, right, why should I trust anybody outside me if what they're saying doesn't mesh with what I am getting? It doesn't mean I have to be right. And that was a great discovery for me. It doesn't matter. I have to be able to build that trust enough so that whatever it is, I pay the price if I make the mistake. I take the responsibility for it. And if it's not something that turns out wonderful, I will graciously accept that. I don't want anybody else being responsible for what I do and my choices. And I think intuition has a lot to do with that. We call it gut instinct, and we now know that the gut is the oldest cells of human form, the first to be established and develop our species. And we know that 80% of our immune system is in the gut. And we know when we don't go with our gut instinct, what happens, right?
Trouble.
Totally. Exactly. And yet the times for me that I trusted it weren't always about me. It was about circumstances outside. And there was one very strong one within the first year where I agreed with whatever, that I would follow the path of who knows what this is, but I'm looking at it strongly. And there was it's kind of weird. So I had a group of people I knew back in the 1970s when I began my path as a psychic, and they were well known in the world as that part of it. And one night, one of my friends was late coming in, and she was a psychiatrist who knew Dr. Andrea Puharich and Marcel Vogel, very well known in their time. Andrea brought Peter Hurkos and Ingo Swann, the old timers, the first generation that was well known in the psychic field in the world, to America, and Uri Geller. And he lived about 10 minutes from me. And we all knew each other. And I'm teaching a class, and Edith was the friend who came in, and she said, Andrea's house burnt to the ground. I said, arson. She said, oh no, he called Peter Hurkos and Ingo Swann. They said, absolutely no. I said, arson. Now, I can look back and say, things like that, I would always trust my intuition and blurt out, even if it was inappropriate. It was like, it was a compelling feeling. Turned out I was right. It was arson. And I went into detail, but that doesn't matter. Andrea called me the next morning and said, oh, Nancy, it wasn't arson. I said, he said he called Peter and all the rest. And I said, I don't care. It was arson. And don't run away when you find out. And so he ran away.
Wow.
Right. And all of that, and I'm saying it the way I got it, to say to people, the psychic world and the intuitive world isn't all visual. It isn't all a voice in your head. It isn't, it could be anything. It can just be what we call direct knowledge. We just get that strong feeling. And of course, if we get that strong feeling and we're so wrong, we have to be able to live with it kindly. And I think that's a big piece of it. Because if I don't live with it kindly, then the next time I get it, I'll be shy. Right. Yeah. And I find intuition is really, for me, I call it soul sensing. It's our soul and our spirit sensing the universe and pulling in the information for us. And if I don't trust that, I pay the price.
Okay. So can you just explore a little bit more about why you believe that you're psychic, and also, like you mentioned, just for our viewers, like, the feeling, things come and you blurted them out. It sometimes it's a feeling, sometimes it could be voices. You said it's many different things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could just, explain a little bit of what was happening to you, or that moment when you realized, okay, this is very different and I need to start.
I love your
'Cause
face. You have the
I
great
think
expressions. I love
thank you. But I'm listening to you, right? And I go through some of those things, and there have been times when I was wrong and I dismissed it like the next time. And especially if something comes to me that's bad, I definitely want to dismiss it.
Sure. I've got, like we all do, I have a very, very practical side, and nursing had really grounded me well. So for me, the instances that prompted me to understand, ooh, this is a little different than most people. I was curious about all of it. I had lots of instances from about age 1 on where I knew things and nobody knew how I knew them. And that was very common for me. I knew when my grandmother died, the moment she died, she came to me. I woke up screaming, "Grandma's dead, Bubby." And my mother said, "Go back to sleep." And then they got the call about 30 seconds later.
Wow.
And there was always that part of me, whether it was sad or hard news or good news or whatever, there was always that part that wondered, what is that? Where is that coming from? How do I know it? I was 14. I was sitting on the porch in Brooklyn, and my mom was there. And my friend Alan had been ill with colds all year, and my mother was commenting on that. And suddenly I just turned to her, I said, he doesn't have colds. He's got leukemia. He'll be dead next year.
Mm.
And he was from
Wow.
leukemia. His parents knew. They never told anybody, including him. And upon his death, he said, "I know, Mom. I've always known."
Mm.
So I was ostracized for saying things that were true. And I think when you look at all of it, we each do as sensitive people, and everybody's sensitive, the part in which I was not accepted for being me was the part that was a little scary and hurt. The part that was true, I was so curious about. I studied psychiatry in one form or another since about age 8, something like that. I started reading books by the time I was 10 on psychology. I wanted to know what this is. And that part of me didn't care what anybody thought of that whatsoever. That part was just fascinated and curious. And how does that happen? Is there another place? I started reading in my early teens. I grew up Jewish, and I started having visions of different things. So I started reading New Testament, and I started going to all kinds of churches, temples. I read on Buddhism. I started reading everything and thought, wait a minute, maybe I'm experiencing the same thing that throughout the ages, they say. We're all gifted, we're all given these gifts. And then that later on, when I teach a certifications now, and part of it was about creative visualization that links to using essential oils and aromatherapy. And one of the things I found in my research, which is common knowledge to people in medical fields who really study, is that a third eye is a literal third eye. It's loaded. That pineal gland, size of a rice bran, is got thousands of optical receptors, just like the eyes do.
Wow.
Right. And I went, oh. And I also saw it as like a spinning diamond, multifaceted light waves spinning in and causing the electromagnetic fields transformer. It's a transformer. And in science, they do call it the composer for the energy for the brain. And so that part linked to everything else. And I thought, right, we are really instruments. We're vehicles. We're channels. Call it whatever you like. We're getting that light wave. It is being converted into usable energy. It's why some people have photographic memories. I had a photographic memory growing up. Thank you, because I didn't have to study. I could just read my notes in my book and then write everything down.
Lucky you.
That was my pineal gland, though. And it could be other things, but that was my pineal gland helping me. So I look at that. That's also the intuition, perhaps, because we all, when we study this, we all come to believe we're all connected, and not just us, and not only the planet, the whole universe, right? So the whole flow comes through. We have it all. And of course, we can't process it consciously. So when I'm focused on something, and I quote Da Vinci, because he's my favorite, all you have to do is focus the light in a direction. That's why he could do so much so well. And I thought, yes, obviously, if you put your focus and intention on it and your emotions match that, then it's like the perfect harmony. We're in perfect harmony with our soul, our personality, our history, our epigenetics, our past lives, perhaps our future ones, whatever. Yeah. So I've had a lot of experiences, not one. And for me, the beautiful thing was nursing, because it taught me that my aim was not to stay in the darker spaces of feelings when I pick up something terrible, to find something about it that is better. So when I would start doing things like anytime I saw a tragedy, psychically, I kept notes on them. However, what I also did was quiet myself down and know that I don't have the answers, that my soul is in touch with all. Therefore, may my soul go and use me in some way. May the Creator use me and go to that situation and assist in any way to offer love and light and bring it forth. And it turns out that of all the crime cases I worked on, the one that I did that with is the most popular one for every production company who's called and said, that's the first one they always want to deal with, is when I gathered a few friends and said a prayer to God that bring him to the light and stop him from causing the pain, a serial killer. And it happened right away. I thought, yeah, that's what happens when, we know when you gather enough belief in enough people, things can change.
Okay. So Nancy, in addition, so when I started off, you are the foundation for all the work that you do comes from you being psychic. And under that umbrella of being psychic, right, you're a psychic forensic detective. Can you talk just a touch about some of the work you do, but can you tell us what that means? Psychic forensic detective.
You're fun.
I would hope so.
I'm sure you are. I know you are. What it means is I can gather usable information where there does not appear to be any available pathway to go. Okay. As I will quote a detective who said, when I said, why do you constantly turn it over to me? And I worked on every unsolved case in one town. Didn't matter how old the case was. People could all be dead. Didn't matter. He wanted to know. He said, because we can't stand not knowing, right? And he said, when we have either too many leads or no leads, how are we going to choose anything? You're like the person who pulls the rabbit out of the magic hat. You give us an idea to follow. And then sometimes I'm considered a profiler. I worked cases with some federal agencies. They had called them profilers, and they asked me in as a last-ditch effort. And I was I did good. That's all I can tell you about it. So I find it fascinating. Not what I do so much. I always find I'm in awe of that. I'm always like this little kid looking, going, really? Oh my God, that's so weird. I also find it a wonderful challenge to always still find love and trust despite what I see in the world. And so I think the intuition helps guide me to that, because it propels me to know we're all connected. So I better find a way to raise that frequency, that vibration, while I'm working at a fresh crime scene, which I've done, while I'm working in an evidence room, looking at things, when I'm driving to follow a killer in a car with agents. Psychically, I'm seeing the car, the vehicle, and I'm taking them right to the door of a killer. And I'm sitting in the car and going, this is nuts. This is really nuts. But I turn around and I go, I got 3 guys in the car and they're all packing guns, so I feel okay. So part of this path of forensic psychic detective leads down really crazy roads. However, I've always liked that.
Wow. You've got a wild side, Nancy.
You think? I always said getting gray really helps. They don't ever expect this from me. When I was younger, they did.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about how you... So I kind of see it as like, I do believe that we all come here with this power, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe sensitivity, or, you know, we have, I can't pronounce the name of the gland, but I call it the third eye in layman's term.
Pineal.
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 Okay. Oh, pineal. And it's a gland, you said?
Yes,
okay.
The ductless gland doesn't have any ducts leading out of it. It's the size of a rice bran.
Okay. Now, could that also be considered like a muscle? You know, and the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Because I think most of us, like for me, you know, I've had experiences where I've like seen things somehow, or I had a dream and like it comes alive. There are a couple of times I remember when I was graduating from high school, I dreamt that one of the girls that I was in school with was pregnant. And I just like innocently said to her, oh, I had a dream you were pregnant. I remember specifically saying it in the bathroom. I said it to her, and she was in fact pregnant. And I found out like 8 months later when she was actually pregnant. And I started to cry because it came true. And there was another occasion, I haven't had too many of these, but there were 2 occasions that I had dreams and they came true. The other one was I did dream lotto numbers. I back in the days when we used to carry beepers, my friends and I would actually, like, if one of the friends was around the block, we would just put in like the block number. And there was one night I had a dream that one of my friends came and he put in the block number, and they always said, you know, if a number comes out, you play the lotto. And it was 4 digits. So I played the New York number. And the funny thing was, there I was sitting waiting, and the number came out in New Jersey. And I actually cried, not because I lost, not because it came out in another state, but the fact that, you know, I saw this thing in my dreams and it actually happened. And my mind immediately shifted to, what if this were something about somebody being killed or something really negative? And I think my tears were like, you know, I don't want to see this, because if it's something negative, I don't want to know.
But that's not negative.
It wasn't, but my mind like shifted.
Well, I mean, the thought you had put the limitations on your ability. You follow that?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what shuts things down. It's, when we're very young, the impressions we get from others around us when we are that way also can either support it or shut it, depending if we're sensitive to them and absorb it. So what you were describing is exactly what I've come to know over the years, is that any kind of pressure that we have about it will limit it, will act as a limitation. So for me, it was a blessing to work in psych unit in the South Bronx. Loved it. Great teamwork. We did things nobody else did. Oh, it was mind-boggling. 10-day crisis intervention, acute psychotics only, and we broke every record in the state for follow-through, breakthroughs, very little drugs ever used.
Wow.
I brought in Gestalt and psychodrama and all kinds of things for them. I loved it so. What it taught me, though, and I think it's very important, is that no matter what happens, what people do to each other in a negative way always has some roots to it, some roots that propel people in an appropriate direction. It may not all be upbringing, nurture and nature. It can also be glitches. Almost every hitman kind of person, not crimes of passion, but hitman mentality, all are neurologically impaired, and yet others who are neurologically impaired, who may have even terrible histories too, don't do that. There's no one answer. What I'm saying is, when I know, and that's why when I know of a disaster or an impending one, I don't avoid it. I send light and love, and I pray for every soul there to be. When I saw 9/11, I was sitting somewhere, and all of a sudden the news came on, and we raced home, and we just stayed in front of the set watching. Everybody was in shock, and so was I. However, what I was also doing was continuously praying for everybody who has left, and their families, and the people who were the perpetrators, that whoever supported that in them and helped build that, everybody needs to come to the light of love. And so that gets me through those dark spaces. That's what I mean. And I couldn't work in detective work or I work federal agencies, I work local, I work all over in other countries. There is no way I can live with what I see if I didn't know how to live with what I see. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense, and it's a blessing. Like I'm leading to my next question, because we're talking about, like the dark side of humanity right now. And it's tough, in that line of work, tracking down murderers and people who just do harm, that can be a lot. And you are receiving messages to find these people and where they are, and you're solving case. I mean, so there's there's good work to do good, and what is that like? I mean, you kind of answered it when you said that the way you deal with it is to pretty much pay through it and send love and light and healing, so I guess that kind of answered that question.
I think so. I think also, pardon me, everybody who gets involved, whether they are in law enforcement proper or assisting in some way, we're part of a team. I've always loved working in a team for anything. I love collaborating. It's fun, right? That part of it. I do believe I know what it's like to have unresolved answers. Everybody does. So I always find it very important to help find closure for people. So there are a lot of things that compel us. It's like you said, and I just wanted to bring up, you mentioned about in your dream state, what would happen, what you would see. Most people get those experiences in their dreams because They are the most relaxed. They're uninhibited. They're not critiquing. No, I don't want to see that. You know, they're not putting that.
No choice.
Right? Exactly. And I found that there's just a part of me that has always known the world is a broken world. And there's no getting away from that. I've been a crime victim. I understand that part of it. But even if I weren't, I feel like I've always known that, hey, why, you know, when people say, well, why me? And I'd always say, why not? Why not me? People lose their homes. People get raped. People get murdered. Oh, just because it doesn't happen to me doesn't mean it doesn't impact. So I find that I have to do something about that. And the gift is helping me do something to make a difference. And I always suggest to people, we don't have to go out and do all that. We can sit, and when we see something, whether a news report or you read about something, true stuff that really is upsetting, close your eyes, take a moment, put light around them, pray for them, whatever words you want. It does. When I say pray, you can be an atheist and pray. You're sending love. You know, it doesn't matter. So I find that makes us feel not helpless in a troubled world. And I find that so important for me. It's part of the reason I can do the work. I simply, you know, I know there'll always be work.
Nancy, where did you find your courage?
I first found my anger before I found my courage.
Tell me about that.
Okay, my dear. I was painfully shy. And after certain traumas, I was mute for a year. I figured there's a term. In 7th grade, I did not speak for the year. And then I had a magnificent human being as my teacher, who in a flash of a very unique moment saved my soul. He just brought me right back. He was magnificent. That broken trust was restored by one person that moment. And it was wonderful. So I didn't have courage. It was very hard for me to speak up for myself. I could speak up for others always, from the time I was 5, I think. When we moved when I was 6, and there was a little boy with glasses walking by, and 2 boys came up to introduce themselves to me, and they made fun of him. And I told them, get off my porch.
Wow.
And they looked at me and I said, everybody's got something wrong with them. You just can't see it all. I've got, get off my porch, and apologized to him. And part of me was going, who are you? I was a 6-year-old shy kid. So I saw that thread always was about others. It wasn't about standing up for me. The courage, for me, courage also means I stand up not only for others, I stand up for me. That didn't come till I was almost murdered by my first husband. And man, did I transform within seconds. To save my life, and to say I was pregnant, to save my baby's life, I faked dying quickly because I knew I was minutes away from dead. And I waited, and when I got up and stood up, I was not the same person who had been down. I was on fire with fury. Again, it was to protect my baby. It was also for me. And after that, it got much easier to do my thing. I didn't always do it like I do now and speak out, but I did my thing. And I didn't always do it well. And some things I did were horrible. I didn't care. I was doing me, and no one would have a say about it anymore. For some reason, that was such a strong incident. Well, it was a strong incident, but I mean a strong incident in breaking the old patterns that didn't work in my life. So I actually have to thank him in a very strange way for bringing me to that brink and going, No one is permitted to do harm to another, including to me. Because before that, I'd be a victim and I wouldn't say a word. You can step all over me before that.
Wow.
Yeah, so anger
That's
brought the courage out.
powerful.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm, you know, speechless, and I'm just like, wow,
You're not
because it's,
speechless.
I kind of am. I'm like, just like, wow, because sometimes, like you're a protector,
Mhm.
and even with your gift, you're here to protect, and nurture. And it's like, like it's unfortunate. And it's something that you mentioned a bit before, like, sometimes it's like, why not you? And
Mhm.
sometimes we say, there's a saying, I use it a lot too, sometimes God doesn't give us more than we can handle.
Absolutely.
But there's a rising of the phoenix out of those ashes,
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And that's the fire and that's the anger, because what I find, even with I've worked with clients for about 45, 50 years, some crazy number like that. And I find the consistency is people who are afraid to express their own anger are very repressed in their truth for themselves to get on and be themselves wholly. And it is true of all of us until we are willing to. And I find that the reason for it, at least on a here and now basis, is usually because somebody scared them with anger, and somebody close to them usually, and they don't want to be, they don't want to feel like they are aligned with that. And I always share, there's a very big difference between rage and anger. And my favorite way of saying it is to turn to people and say, so who ever in the history of the planet do you admire or worship or anything? And some people will say Christ and Jesus, and some will say Mother Teresa, and some will say Buddha, and some will say Melchizedek, and whatever, or somebody they know. And I'll go, so you know what? Take a look at their lives. They got angry. They couldn't have stood for anything if they weren't so angry at what was going on. Take a look at every nonprofit that ever was created. It was created by somebody getting very angry at the injustice. Take a look at the justice system, even though it's not quite a justice system always, but it was created because people were angry at the injustices. Anger is a very healthy part of us. Rage isn't.
Okay.
So that's how we get courage, though. We let that anger out.
I never looked at it like that before. Makes a lot of sense. That was very profound.
Good.
Makes
I
a
hope
lot of sense.
Hope it helps. Because it's more fun to have feisty women anyhow.
There sure is. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Toronto about a picture she posted on Facebook. And it was this woman who is a Swedish woman, but of African descent. And she is like this, she's got her arm up, and somebody just happened to capture the picture. And she is up against like a wall of like, they look like Nazis, and she's going at them, and their head is shaved and her head is shaved, and she's like this and they're like this, and it was a pretty radical picture. And one of the interesting things, since I brought that up, that was interesting, was this woman is actually an activist and had been doing it for a while. It's just, and everyone is saying, wow, look at how brave she is. And she actually had been doing it for a while, born out of anger. It's just at that moment, in that space of time, someone happened to capture a picture. But I think a lot of people were saying like, oh, she's so brave. But she had been doing this for a while. And that too, I'm sure, was born out of anger.
Absolutely.
That courage.
Oh, it has to be. Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Well, if we stop and think, even the people who are the most prejudiced people you can imagine, don't try. Um, the roots go back to their repression of anger in their own homes, usually, where they weren't permitted to think differently than the people who bullied them
Mm.
or else. So what do? They bully others outside.
Yeah.
If everybody could speak their truth in their own home, we would have peace on earth.
Wow. Very profound.
Well,
Very profound.
I don't know. I just feel like, you know, there was a dolphin I spoke with once, Percy, and I wrote a song about him with a folk singer. And it was because Percy looked at it at one point and said to me, you know, you're like, the human race right now is like a bunch of teenagers run amok.
Mm.
They said, we understand that. You're doing
Wow.
stupid and crazy stuff. You're killing off others. You're killing yourselves. You're doing all kinds of things that don't help. You're ruining our waters. You're ruining everything. You're teenagers. And if you think that way, Mother Earth is a great alchemist. She will keep transforming it. And then I had these visions of, oh, earthquakes. And, you know, now we know fracking causes earthquakes. But everything we do has consequences, right? So I thought that dolphins, very rarely, they do fight occasionally, but most of the time, there's no war because they all support each other. There's no prejudice. We may not see the different look in each one or a different color in each one or anything because we're so egocentric about our species. But all species can recognize each other and families and all the rest of it. And most of them are not warlike. We are unique among many.
That's true. That's very true.
Yeah,
So now,
yeah. Sorry.
it's okay. So you were also able to communicate with animals?
Oh, yeah. Always. I used to play only with ants in Brooklyn because I didn't have any pets.
Ants?
Yeah. Yeah, my mother didn't want us to have pets. We finally had a dog eventually. But my mother was very difficult about animals. So I would play with the ants in the sidewalk cracks. We had fun.
Okay.
They were brilliant. They were brilliant. After that, when somewhere along the line as a young adult, I started knowing a feel. And so I've worked with, I don't know, maybe more than 1,000 horses. I lost number of dogs and cats that I worked with. I've been a rescue agent. And the communication with animals is partly the feel of and the seeing the energetic field in them. We're all made of light, electromagnetic fields. That's part of it. And I think of the points of light as holographic, where they have history in them.
Okay.
And so I would see a racehorse in the paddock, and I'd look and I'd say, gets lame on the right leg on the inside track. And they'd go, the jockey would say, oh no. I'd say, yeah, right leg. I was just seeing the horse's head, but the horse was directing me down and I could feel it go like weaker. So I'd be kinesthetically getting a sense of it.
Okay.
And then other times it would be after I was right and proven right, he was really pissed, the jockey. So he took me to see another horse. And I looked at the horse and I thought, okay, you're going to get it, jockey, because your ego's too involved. And I said, now, why'd you take me to her? I don't speak French, and she's from France, and she only speaks French. And he goes, how do you know she's French? Yes, she came from France. And I'm going, oh, he's such a fool. But because the horse had these images embedded of France.
Okay.
When they were driving through places, it was countryside, it was Paris, and that's what I got. The smell of it, everything was French. So I thought it was fun.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just fun, that part. But I found missing dogs and cats, and they would tell me where they are. And sometimes not. And please don't anybody call me about those anymore. Oh my God. And missing people. I think, because the percentage, no matter what people think, is much lower. It's high for the issue. What you can look at 100 dogs and maybe find 3.
Okay.
And many, of course, nobody will ever know what happened.
Okay.
It just is.
Okay.
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 Where
So in addition to being a psychic forensic detective, being able to communicate with animals, what else do you do?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a nurse by training and by work until about 1975 when I opened up my practice as a medical intuitive, holistic health educator, psychic, and I don't know what else. Along the way, I've written songs, I've published magazines, I've written some books. I've co-founded 2 nonprofits, and my husband and I are political, environmental activists. And I don't know, I do pretty, and oh, right, duh. And my passion is I got involved in utilizing essential oils. Years ago, I used to not like the smells, the perfumes and all. Once in a blue moon, there'd be something I'd like. And as a kid, I liked it. And then when I got to know the difference in quality and grade, I walked away from everything. And I was introduced to some that what I call are real, unlike most things in America whatsoever. I got so committed to it that I did a research paper. I actually did research with special needs children. It's an exploratory study on autism and essential oils. And out of 12, small study, 12 children nationwide, out of 9 nonverbal, 7 became verbal within 1 week. And I know, yep. And not just that, focus and sleep, and picky eaters became better eaters, etc. And it's really what they learned along the way too. And the oils were transformational on that. And I can say that because my name's on the research paper. No commercial speech. Can't talk that way. And it has fascinated me. It is also because I am not in a wheelchair. I was permanently injured by my husband. And I battled my way out of wheelchairs and out of being paralyzed.
So your first husband?
My first one. Right. And so it was supposed to be permanent damage. And according to what they say, and according to all the reports, several years after the injuries and surgeries, and a major nerve was dead. And I said, nah, there has to be a change. And I studied yoga, I taught yoga, I studied nutrition, taught it. I just kept going and kept feeling more. And I always knew that no matter what I felt, it was far better than if I had just accepted their terms. So I never look back. I don't use drugs. I never have, not in decades. And it's been an incredible gift. There's not a drug in our home. And we're pretty much all organic. And it's things I learned along the way. And then when the essential oils came, that was mind-boggling, the difference, night and day. And so I threw myself in to even learning chemistry, which as a student nurse, I didn't want to learn at all. So it's whatever moves me. And for me, I look for tools that everybody can use, because I think it's so important that we all be more community oriented, more tribal in our life. I find that fragment and separation between people is hurting everybody. And I think that the more we stay in the plastic mentality of society, you know, the garbage stuff that doesn't support the earth or us or any species, the harder it is for us to feel good. So that's another passion. I love it and I have fun with it. And I illustrate, and I'm doing a new book for Inner Journeys for Mothers to Be using essential oils. It's a play sheets and music, and it's got everything in it. And I love it. And I'm collaborating with somebody I called who I love and said, okay, I got an idea that I want you to do with me.
Wow.
We're days away from finishing it, so that's fun. And then I have a few more online. Writing a couple of books, fiction, and I have another Inner Journeys for Us that is that I wrote years ago just for my clients. I decided to upgrade it and update it and show them how I use essential oils to support the inner journey. I work with it when I work crime cases. I don't know. I look back at how recovery for me, it would be exhausting. I mean, there were times I would just hit the sack and just want out, you know, a long time. I'd work a hard scene. And now with the essential oils, I can really move peacefully, make a bridge for myself between one thing in the world that may be very tough or be at a bedside. I'm a minister. I write certification programs for nurses and lay people, blah, blah, blah. We have a seminary. So all those things, just I have to make bridges, I call them, from one thing to another. And the essential oils frequency is so high when it's pure, and it has no side effects when it's pure. You don't always know side effects because you can't see what the cells are doing. So It's my love. It's just something else I love.
I can tell you sound very passionate about it.
Well,
and I will mention, I have been to your house and I have seen your oil collection. I have seen your oil collections.
in my office. They're hiding from everybody right now. You can't see them here. That's because I don't have you focused on a corner of the room. Oh.
Nancy, I am in awe. You know, you are extraordinary. You know, how do you do it all? Now I'm curious because, you know, you're very sensitive to everything, right? Mm-hmm. And you've developed your perineal glands.
Pineal.
I would say, yeah, it's very developed because that's what you do, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, how are you able to, you mentioned the oils, you mentioned sending love, you know, but what is it like a day of being Nancy? I'm curious, what is that like?
Oh, I have so much fun, honey. I wish it on everybody. When I wake up, I hear birds and I go, and in the winter, I can't hear the birds. So I remember standing on a corner in Manhattan. I grew up in Brooklyn and would come into New York when I was like 10 by myself. Back then we could. And I would stand on one little corner and marvel that in that little corner, any place, there are millions and millions and billions of people who created ideas and things. They created the machinery to produce them. They created the this and that and that. Then they had to have transportation, so they had to create the wheels and I'd go on in my mind about, oh my God, everything is a miracle everywhere. So I do that first thing in the morning anyhow.
Wow.
I have a roof over my head and that I have a bed that's comfy, whatever it is. And I thank. And then I do, when I'm ready to get up, because I am blessed with good income and not in a way where I have to keep working day and night, I did for many years. And it was the essential oils that changed everything. So anyhow, my day, I will read for a while. I'll do a gratitude prayer with my husband. We'll anoint ourselves. We'll write in a journal. He'll make us breakfast. Yes. And then he may do the laundry. Oh, that's him, not me. Okay. So what I do is kind of laugh at that and go, wow, this is fun. I'll call some friends, check in on them, see how they're doing, see if they need anything. And then I may put on music and dance because I love music and I love dancing. I may write. I do social media a lot for
Wow.
my community, my network. So I have a secret club on Facebook, and I've got cousins coming out that I haven't spoken to in 40-something years who find me somewhere or saw me on TV and they connect. And so, oh, what fun. And I'm always booking travel because I teach a lot of places. And while I'm teaching and we have family in other places, I like playing. So I have to go places I like too.
Yeah.
So I love technology.
Good
And
for you.
I don't tweet a lot. And LinkedIn, I find the minute I go on there, I have more work than I want. So it's really hard. I have an assistant and she does all my emails. And I go, no, 1 a week now, sessions. That's it. And the next moment she goes, yeah, but this person really needs. I go, I thought you're supposed to be protecting me. So actually, a lot of stuff I do, I used to love baking. I loved cooking. I don't do a lot of it now. I rather play and network and I don't know, and travel, see beautiful things, talk to people from all over the world. Oh my God. I love Skype. You love
Wow.
Skype? Love it.
Yes.
I speak to people in Dubai and Australia and Malaysia and Singapore and all over because they're part of my community and keeping in touch is so important and I just love helping them. And I have watched miracles and it's so much fun. And for years I wanted to travel and I didn't travel a lot, particularly when I was raising my kids. And so again, it's the essential oils and what they can do that brought out my first trip to Europe. A group in Ireland called me and said, okay, we know it's working. Now we need to really know how to do everything. And I got to go to Ireland as my first trip to Europe. Are they funny people? So I don't know. Every day's different. I don't have a schedule. I don't like
Lovely.
schedules. Don't like them. And I have a schedule in terms of, every day I have to look and see my notes and what I need to do. I'm a planner. So I'm a funny mix, I guess. I don't know. Are you a planner?
I do that. I did that because I started my own business recently. And I've always had this thing. I don't want to plan my day because I'm very creative and I'm always buzzing with ideas and I don't like to be restricted. But I found that I could waste a lot of time. Yes. So if I want to be a little bit more effective, intentional, I need to do some planning.
Sure.
But I cannot be a hardcore planner because I'm going to kill that side of me that's just like, oh, let me wander over here and see what's happening here and be inspired over here.
Well, that's what you were asking.
For a good while I was.
Yeah.
So I'm not much of a planner. I'm trying to, however, be able to be intentional and focused with some time so that I can move ahead and do some things that I would actually like to do.
Well, I think I was going to say, you have the key for me is balance. And that's why I always thank my nursing days and the educators at Brooklyn College School of Nursing who really gave me that balance, that practical side and the importance of it. So I am a planner, but I'm not type A in planning.
Yeah.
I'll play, I'll be spontaneous, I'll be dropping everything and saying, let's go someplace instead. No problem. However, when it comes to creativity, as soon as that concept or whatever it is that I'm looking to do, that's when I start taking steps immediately. I ground it. I take
Okay.
notes immediately. Ideas, always write it down. About 1984, I was taking yoga classes, and a friend, Elaine Silver. And anyone who goes to nancyorlenweber.com, go to the little click on art, A-R-T. There are poems and stuff, but there are 2 songs I wrote with her that you could hear. She's got a gorgeous voice, beautiful, stunning voice. So the creativity started pouring out over a period of time during that, where I was suddenly writing poems by the gazillion. They wouldn't stop. I think I wrote a few thousand poems in like, I don't know, a few weeks. And I wrote them on diner mats, and I wrote them on napkins, and I wrote them on the back of an envelope, and I threw them in bags. And Elaine would tell people for years when she would sing, she told the story of, well, I was so bored with the things I was singing and all. And so I was with Nancy one night. She would drop by after my clients about 10 o'clock at night. And she'd say, so I wish I had better songs. I said, you want to write a song with me? She said, well, what are we going to do? I said, well, I have some poems. I have some ideas. She said, and here's this bag lady with 2 big bags filled with papers, and I'm rifling through them, and I go, okay, let's start with this one. I knew exactly what I wanted. We wrote 12 songs in 6 weeks.
Wow.
And most of them are on her CDs or whatever. So
Okay.
that was fun. And so that's the grounding. The reason I say that is you still have to have that side of you to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Balance.
Thank you for that. And it's an amazing thing what happens when you get together with another creative energy. It's like and the gateways, it's like you open up the floodgates. That actually happens to me when I go to the beach too. It's like something just opens and I just like,
Yep.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. It reminds you of the vastness, the unending, the unlimited. I have a publication company. We call it the Unlimited Mind. Right. But and for me, it's play. And play doesn't mean that you don't get something done. It's an attitude. Right?
It's true. Mm-hmm.
Right. So sometimes when I would pay bills, and this started long ago before I could afford to pay my bills, I decided it's all attitude. And I love caps, and I love, all kinds of hats. So I put on this cap, and I'd pretend that I was this very wondrous accountant coming to help this person out. I had to wear a totally different thought. And I decided that, okay, so there's the electric bill. There's the switch that turned on the light. And let me think of what it took this world to develop that so that I can just turn a switch on and have light. Oh my God, thank you. And so I started loving giving my money to all the places.
Wow.
And it made so much sense. It made so much sense because I would always laugh when people would say, I don't want to pay all those taxes. And I would turn around and I'd say, I hope one day to pay millions in taxes. Why not? What's wrong with everyone? It's okay. However, it's really okay when we spend our money in ways to support health and well-being and the planet and everything else, and we're conscious of what we do. I'm grateful for spending the money in that direction. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah. That's a good way of looking at it.
Well, it's real.
Yeah.
I think it's consistent with what's real. I think when we get this attitude about having to pay our bills, you know. Well, oh God, I'm so
I
tired.
worked hard. I am
Yeah,
always paying bills.
sure.
I worked hard all week. Why am I giving the tax guy this first?
Why not? I like roads. I like toll booths. Where I don't like it, sure, I'm going to go and vote for what I like and not vote for what I don't like and live with it or move to another country.
Right.
I, you know, I'm not arguing with anybody about it because I'm not arguing with me.
Right.
If I don't
But
argue with me, yeah, go ahead.
that's a really great way to look at it. It's it's like the first of all, you're filled with gratitude there, so that when you look at it from that perspective, we are very fortunate,
We are.
and then it's either you can stress about it, or you can look at it in a way where, what, we're pretty darn lucky to have a lot of the things that we do have just right at our fingertips.
Absolutely. Oh, you know, even if we didn't, I lived in a car for a while after some circumstances when I was younger. I still had a ball. And you can have fun anywhere. I'm sorry. You know, when I just don't always get it. I get the hard times, you know, when we're in physical and emotional pain, we're in it. But when we look at our lives and we actually count the moments that were terrible, do they add up to our whole life, or are they a few hours? Particularly the tragedies, they may be a few minutes, and yet we spend so much of our lives either dwelling on them in a way that does not support gratitude for what has happened before that and what happens after that. I don't know to be grateful for the terrible things. However, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to live through those and see what else is the next door, and not let fear be more powerful than my desire to live. You know, so fear is a healthy piece, but it for me, it's not supposed to stop me from experimenting, from living. Caution to me is healthy. Caution and fear that causes us not to take the next moment fully and embrace it, that's not fear and that's not caution. That's something else. That's terror.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you use when you, maybe there's something that's new, or something that's different, and it's a situation that you might have to step into,
Mm-hmm.
and fear, maybe caution, maybe all of those things come up. Do you use your intuition to help you through those situations?
I've learned to do the following, and this I've been doing for about 40 something years. I first ask and send it up. Is this something I am to support, do, speak, be? And if not, I graciously accept that. And if I am, then I go. And then whatever I feel, I trust. So there are things I will not even look at, have nothing to do with. I like what the Aborigines say. If a situation resonates with me, they don't judge anybody. They talk about situations instead. If it resonates, I come forward. If it doesn't, I remove myself. So I have walked into things, I've carried out people in burning buildings years ago. I've done crazy stuff maybe in that sense. However, it's not crazy because it's absolute trust of the intuition that is guided by asking our creator, is this something you want me to do? And the reason, there was a moment of aha to me years ago where I was giving, you know how anybody comes, that your friend, your family, or somebody, and you're always saying yes to them. And there's so many people who do that, right? Without pausing. And I realized, wait a minute, there's not yes or no. It's a different situation than the one last week when they said the same thing. Today is a different day. And what I discovered is I don't know their whole life plan, their soul lessons, and I don't know that. So how could I possibly know whether this is going to be smart for me to say to them or say yes or no? So I always pause and say a little prayer up and ask for the guidance. And if I feel that it's a no because it's good for them and me.
Okay.
And if I say yes, it's good for both of us. And I trust that. And I let it go.
Okay.
It works for me.
Okay. So what would you say to someone who battles? I battle sometimes, so I'm sure that there are a lot of people who battle. You doubt, you may pray.
Sure.
Sometimes you may get a feeling and you think, and it doesn't happen. But how do we learn to trust?
I don't know how anybody but me learns that. I mean, we each, right? And one of the ways I learned was the same way everybody does, I believe, is that I didn't always trust. And I paid the price. And I would look at it and say, I missed that opportunity. I didn't trust myself. Or I had this feeling of something occurring and I didn't trust my intuition on it. And it did occur and I didn't have to participate. I didn't have to be there. So I think for each of us, there's this equation of how many times do we distrust ourselves before we start realizing, well, that didn't work. And I don't like living with the aftermath of thinking that way. So you know what? I'll take the consequences. I'll trust myself in all of it and we'll see what happens. And it is why I think of, I was working on a homicide, and it was a fresh case. It was maybe 2 days. And I was called in, and I go to the crime scene, and I'm walking in. I have to laugh. I know it's a crime scene. I'm sorry, and I know all the people involved still after many years. I love them all, and I look upstairs, and I go, the murderer is up there, and I start telling them details about it. So we go back to the police station, the prosecutor's office, because it was a lead investigator there. And he said, that can't be. We've already polygraphed him. It's not the time. I said, you're wrong. Now, I would always advise people not to go in anybody's face and say, you're wrong. That's inappropriate. I kept saying that because the trust of that was so strong.
Okay.
That I could not deny what I knew. I could see it. And everything else I saw, they backed me up on afterwards on each other piece that I saw. The vacuum cleaner, the cord was ripped. She was tied up. How she died, what he did. They said, yes, 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 but it couldn't be him. I said, sure, it was. And I did that again on a what we'll call a locked door mystery where a woman was murdered. And the state troopers, they were totally sure that it was her 16-year-old daughter. I said, you don't go near her. I wish I could stop you because she's so traumatized and you're going to traumatize her more. It was a 19-year-old guy and I described him. 6 months later, he was caught on something else and his thumbprint matched on the door, the window. He was that skinny, he could go through a little slit of an open window. So those circumstances, by the time I got to those, I was so programmed inside me to trust and not argue with myself that I argued with all of them. I think I was nice about it, sort of, but I don't know. Only I think that's why I don't battle myself. I let it go. Now, if I had been wrong, and I remember on some other thing nationally, I had enough right that they were able to find what they needed to find. There were pieces of it didn't add up. Other pieces did. And I'm used to that. You know, I tell people, if you go for a psychic reading and you think they're 100% accurate, why don't you just call them God and get over it? You know, because nobody is. Very few people ever are all accurate on everything they're saying at that time. It's a mixed bag. And people understand that, then they become responsible for sifting through that.
Okay.
Same thing. I mean, either side of the coin. But battling ourselves, I think we all do until we stop, until we find a way out of that battle. And I think it's a very personal fight of who would you rather believe, you or somebody else?
That's true. You know, it's funny. One of the things that I've learned in my lifetime, in my 25 years on the planet here.
I love you.
I've really learned to honor my first gut instinct about something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like maybe if I meet someone or it's a certain situation and I pay attention to that first gut instinct because that means something. And as I've gotten, you know, a little bit older, now I'm 25, you know, I've learned to like really to honor that and pay attention and not, even if like I go back and forth, I try not to disagree with it. And the other thing I have learned to do that I practice is if there's something that like, you know, I'm worried about or struggling with a bit, I'll pray, I'll send it up. And whatever my first thought is on that situation in the morning, like if I get up and I get a first thought on that when my eyes open, whatever it is, I'll try to honor that. So those are two things that I know.
That's beautiful.
You know, because I have had many times where I have not paid attention to my initial gut reaction. And in the end, you know, whatever the outcome is, I'm like, shoot, in the beginning, you know, I felt this way and I really, so I understand what you know, and there is some truth to that. And I do pay attention to it because I've been wrong just so many times, you know, that makes perfect sense, you know?
Sure. I think that what we can carry, we all have software in us, programs. The brain is a computer. I mean, that's why computers were created. They're parallel on this earth. And we have these programs, right? And the central nervous system is the instrument upon which these programs play out to the rest of us. It's kind of fascinating to even look at. And I hear what you're saying, and I still think you're way ahead of the game, if I may, in that you've already come to understand, and I can hear throughout the conversations we've had, there is not only a warmth that echoes throughout everything you do, it's an ease, even if you don't feel that all the time. There's an ease in you that allows you to still come out and be you. And I think that's far more important overall, because, yeah, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to sometimes not trust yourself. And I don't care how long we get to, whether we live on this earth a short time or a long time, we're always going to make some mistakes along the way. I tell all my grandkids at some point when they feel very bad about mistakes, I kind of giggle and laugh and I go, I got to tell you something. They go, what? Oh, well, the older you get, the more mistakes you make because the more you get to do. I said, so I promise you, you better get used to making mistakes now so that you don't feel bad about it. And there's something else about it. I just realized many years ago, I saw Dr. Rocco Arrico. He studied Aramaic with the top scholar in the Mideast many years. And he is a foremost scholar in today's world on the original translation of Aramaic. And I have a little booklet from him on the Lord's Prayer. And it breaks down the actual real translation of words. There is no such thing in Aramaic as the word translates as evil. There is nothing. That word is actually mistakes and errors, not evil. Isn't that cool? I don't hear you.
Now I hear the audio it went out right before you said I don't hear you.
Aha. Okay.
But I can hear you now. I heard when you said you have the brochure from him and you have a translation on the Lord's Prayer.
Right, and that there is no word translatable that means evil. It was not a used word at all. The actual word is mistakes or errors.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Okay.
Right. Yes. Amen means sealed in faithfulness. So I look at it all and think, okay, throughout history, we've all made mistakes. We've all had errors, some more terrible than others, some more minor. And we need to stop beating ourselves up because that never changes it. And when it comes to being psychic, I don't think it's, the funny part about that, I relate it to all this. There are people who are psychic who don't want to use it for anything other than obtaining money. And there are others who will use it to be super creative, artists, writers, singers. Psychic is not all mental. It's not all this, it's all the different senses, and it's gathering all the information from the universe and parsing it. And each of us have different antennas, just like we have different blood types. So somebody will be Mozart. He always said he got them straight from above. It wasn't from him. My husband had many patents in his line of work before he decided to just be with me forever and stop. He was patent on specialized semiconductors. All the answers he got for finalizing the patents, all of that came in dreams.
Wow.
He'd just go to sleep and know that in the middle of the dream, and then he'd wake up and he'd have it all. So isn't that being psychic? Isn't it the person who doesn't know what plants thousands of years ago, they're walking around, they're looking for food, and they see countless different things. Now, why they go to one, take it, and sometimes they didn't all die tasting things, they were tuned in. Isn't that the same thing?
Okay.
So when people isolate something that I find is it is a multifaceted spectrum of gathering information and utilizing it. And we're all very different in how we do it. Even if you go to psychic readings, they're all very different. Different approach, different everything. People who read, the other side, whether we do trance work or we read the other side or do past lives or do little blah, 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 all that stuff. Everybody's different in how they approach it and how they receive it and how they give it. And you'll find some become more artistically inclined in development of it to express something, that gorgeous thing behind you. Hey, they were just copying from inside what they saw. Now, where'd that come from? Right?
Yeah.
Where'd all the myths worldwide come from? And Joseph Campbell's, when he did his beautiful work on it, that the whole world has commonality in myths. The whole world is one psychic universe. But psychic simply means it's a universe born of spirit. Everything is spirit. Everything is soul. Every living anything is. life. So I look at that all and go, yeah, and you worry about battling your mind. Give it up and have fun with it.
Wow.
Just have fun with it. It's beautiful. It's an experience. It's fascinating. Don't judge it. Besides, even if you don't trust your intuition, and then 5 years later, and you keep journals and you write about it and you look at it and you look back and go, if I had trusted it and went down that road, look what I've done because it inspired me to make certain changes. We need those mistakes. We absolutely need them.
Wow.
Matter of fact, that's what we remember most, isn't it? We go, oh, damn, if I had not done that. Right? Right. Oh, why did I marry him? Well, I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't. I don't have a problem with that. That's the point. You know, you look at it, it's not a mistake. Fun.
Wow.
Life is fun if we can, you know?
Yeah.
It's a miracle, so why not enjoy it as a miracle?
Wow. Yeah. It's like, wow.
I love being there.
So do I. So do I.
Yes, of course.
Wow, Nancy, thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. This is delightful.
It
Oh,
sure is. It's an honor.
for me too. This is beautiful. You're
Thank
an old,
you.
very, very, very mature soul.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you. I think so.
I think so too. Oh, so good. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me on, sweetheart.
You are quite welcome. But before you go,
Yes.
it is a tradition here
Oh,
at Lifestyle by Design for our guests to offer 3 action steps. And I'm going to add one more thing in here. So what
now you tell me.
what can someone do, you know, and someone who's looking
Sure.
at this show, they want to, how can they learn to develop their intuition?
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it out to you and you decide what you feel. You know, how can they either learn to develop their intuition, trust their intuition, or tap into their intuition?
Oh, all of it.
Okay. What are 3 things?
Right. First, I am a believer that you write down what you think you're tuning into or picking up. I don't care whether it's from a dream or a thought or conversation in your head. Doesn't matter. You won't know whether you're fooling yourself or not unless you take it seriously as an investigation. It's a tool of investigation, and treat it that way rather than, oh, I hope I'm right, or just write it down. Write down the date, write down the time, write down what it is. You may not ever get answers for all of them, and some of them will surprise you, because that way of doing it will teach you, oh, so you got something, makes no sense, and it doesn't link to anything. 3 months later, something happens and you go, wait. Now, the mind will play tricks. So you go back to the journal you wrote in on this event and you look back, and there is exactly that conversation you just heard, which will teach you about what Stephen Hawking says about the brief history of making of time, about all the metaphysics. We all say the space and time is a construct, and you go, how could I possibly know that? So that's, I find, a very important step in development, in trusting, and in understanding what this is really about for oneself, because it's also a way of exploring your own mind and how it functions. So when things come, you also want to, if it's visual, you want to try and draw it even with the colors and the crayons or anything.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter if you can draw or not. You do your best to really make it as detailed as possible. and then examine it weeks later. I think you have to really go for the long haul. This is a journey. This is not an overnight, I want to do it now. And it usually will guide you by developing the intuition. It will lead you down a very strong path. And I say it that way because it's your own path that your soul has laid out, and now you're really proceeding to take it seriously. And it's your way of teaching yourself that you do honor it, that you honor that gift you have been given. You are not just saying to a friend, oh, I am so psychic, or I had that dream and it came true. No, write it down. I swear to you, you don't need to prove it to anybody else. You need to prove it to yourself. And you also have to know when it's a mistake. And you have to know when it's symbolic. And you have to know when it's as is, because people get things differently all the time. So you may see this beautiful mountain and sunrise and stuff, and you write it all down. And you think, oh, what a lovely symbolic thing, because I guess I'm going to, spiritually I'm climbing the mountain. And yeah. And 2 weeks later, a friend says, I've got a treat for you. We're going to go climb a mountain and we're going to do this. And you go, what? Right. However, you can go back and look at it all. And if you do it often enough, you start building this understanding of yourself. I think it's a way to go really to know yourself beautifully.
Okay.
So the trust and the development, they're all woven in together. They're not separate. And I find that most of it, even when people get help, I've written books on soul exercises and the psychic detective work in the animal communication and activities people can do and exercise. The bottom line, though, is that you have to do it yourself. You still have to do it. So simple things in development of trust on a daily basis can be like this. People still get mail. Most of it's junk mail, but we still get mail. Before you go to pick up your mail, ask yourself how many pieces. Just ask yourself. Stop playing with that. Ask yourself if there are any pieces there that are bills, anything else that's special. Over a course of time now, because I had done it so much, and it's also insignificant, doesn't matter. So you're not overwhelming yourself with a test. You're just developing it. It became such a natural thing for me that when I was expecting a particular check for something in the mail, I'm driving and I went, oh, it's coming today. I could feel it coming right in. So at 3 o'clock, I went right to the mailbox and there it was. I just could feel, you're attached to those things. So finding simple things to trust yourself on.
Okay.
Things that don't have a real powerful reward or punishment attached to it, that have less meaning, play with them. They're more playful. Keep records. And as you do that every day, do I want to go this way or that way as I drive? I want to go this way. Or that way? No, I don't want to even go near there. Huh. Oh, I think something terrible is happening there. Oh, you do? Okay. So go this way and then find out and look it up later and see if something did happen or not.
Okay.
It's a way of knowing, okay, that was my fear operating. That wasn't my intuition. Because fear and intuition can be like a tiny space apart. And in order to tell which is your imagination, which is tuning in, which is your fear operating, because they're subtle until they become loud in you.
Okay.
And so when we take all these little steps, we develop it. We develop the knowing of, oh, no, that's my fear. Oh, no, that's my creative imagination going wild. And yet every so often, you're going to trick yourself. It's going to be real. That's okay. If you begin, I still have my first 3 years, everything written. And it blew me away because I didn't understand until I wrote it all down. Oh my God, we are on each other's minds. It's not just a thought. It's not just a common term we use. We're literally in each other's minds. That's crazy. Oh, that's what they meant by the universal mind. I get it now. You know, I'd be vacuuming and I'd have this conversation in my head with somebody. I wrote it down. And then I would call them. And they'd say, I was just thinking of you. And I'd go, okay, wow. I'd write that down next to it. And I'd keep doing that until I saw this whole woven pattern of existence that we are truly all connected.
Wow.
Got it?
I got it.
Okay, so that's mine.
I got it. I'm with you on that. Like,
Well,
wow.
I think it's why they've always written about it throughout history, on walls, on anything, is that we're all one. We are.
Yeah.
We're unique, each of us. Patterns of organic energy. Woolly.
Wow. So, Nancy.
Yes, dear.
I know that you have like over a year's waiting list already for sessions that you're really booked, but if somebody wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you?
NancyOrlenWeber.com and lightwingcenter.org. Those are the two websites. One of them is our seminary where I teach, and people who are interested in learning, because I believe that none of us can do it for anybody else. We can open the door and help them look in, and we can support their looking. But we're not doing it for anybody. And I believe education changes everything. And it could be fun. It doesn't have to be so serious.
That should be your tagline. Is that your tagline?
When I make up programs for even C's for nurses, continuing ed, it's fun. I refuse not to have fun on this. Why? There's enough stuff that happens that we don't have a say over. But when we have a say over it, let's play. Okay? I'll meet you in the sand.
I'll meet you in the sand. I totally agree with you. I totally agree. So I want to thank you for spending your time here with me tonight. It was an honor. Thank you for sharing your insight, your wisdom, your experience, your journey. Thank you for being an inspiration, and stepping into the light, having the courage to do what you do, because it is a beautiful gift to the world that you were given. So thank you for sharing it.
I love you. Thank you so much.
I love you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're quite welcome. And I want to thank everyone who joined us. And for those of you who are looking, thank you for thank you for stopping by. I hope this was of great value to you. You can, if you'd like to reach out to Nancy Orlen, NancyOrlen, Weber, WEBER.com. And also the Light, LIGHT, Wing, WING, Center, CENTER.org. So Light Wing Center and NancyOrlen.com. So thank you all. This is the video podcast series, Lifestyle by Design. Go out there, design a life that you love, and live it. Don't forget to live it. If you enjoyed this video, remember to share it, comment, like, subscribe, thumbs up, and let us know what you think. And I hope to see you on the other side, living the life that you love. So have a good night and be blessed. Good night.